And if you have any question about what John Kerry's made of, just spend 3 minutes with the men who served with him 30 years.
I served with John Kerry.
I served with John Kerry.
John Kerry has not been honest about what happened in Vietnam.
He is lying about his record.
I know John Kerry is lying about his first Purple Heart because I treated him for that injury.
John Kerry lied to get his Bronze Star. I know. I was there. I saw what happened.
His account of what happened and what actually happened are the difference between night and day.
John Kerry has not been honest.
And he lacks the capacity to lead.
When the chips were down, you could not count on John Kerry.
John Kerry is no war hero.
He betrayed all his shipmates. He lied before the Senate.
John Kerry betrayed the men and women he served with in Vietnam.
He dishonored his country. He most certainly did.
I served with John Kerry. John Kerry cannot be trusted.
Swiftboat Veterans for Truth is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
So anyway, there was a bit of fallout from that. I mean, how could there not be? It's one of the nastiest pieces of political advertisement since Willie Horton. There was always the possibility of blowback. But I get ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. Welcome to a fair hearing, where hearings both famous and obscure are combed through for whatever gems of wisdom might be found. Today's hearing is a confirmation hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for 2 ambassadorships. Although for our purposes, we only care about one nominee, the one to Belgium. You see, the nominee to be ambassador to Belgium is one Sam Fox. Sam has earned this nomination in the most American way possible. He bought it. Through the many donations Sam has given over the years to Republicans and Republican-affiliated groups, Sam was granted the privilege of being nominated to be an ambassador. So let's talk about them a bit. I don't want to underplay Sam's donations, because they're a big part of the story. Both how he got nominated for ambassador, and how his nomination hearing went so wrong. So let's talk about them a bit. Before the 2004 election, Sam was already a mega donor. Here's a story about fundraising for the 2000 election where, here's the entire chart if you want to freeze frame it, but here's the relevant part. Sam was such a giant donor that he was outgiving UPS and Microsoft. And this is just for 1 year, 1999. Not even an election year. In 1996, Sam donated $225,000 to the Republican National Committee, so I haven't just isolated that 1 year. Sam was a major source of funds for the Republican Party, so when I say he bought this ambassadorship, this is what I mean. But why does Sam want to be an ambassador? Whenever you become an ambassador, at least in the US, you generally keep that title for life. For the rest of your life, you are introduced as ambassador. There is prestige in that title. And unlike other courtesy titles, like secretary for both current and former cabinet secretaries, or judge for current and former judges, ambassador doesn't require having a political career or expertise in a field. It just requires massive political donations. To be clear, some ambassadors do have a great deal of skill in the field. Which brings us back to how Sam got this nomination, political donations, and the consequences of those donations. Specifically the donations to the Swiftboat Veterans for Truth. You know, the people who made the ad questioning John Kerry's military record I played at the beginning of this video. Here's a reminder in case you've forgotten.
John Kerry gave aid and comfort to the enemy by advocating their negotiating points to our government.
Why is it relevant? Because John Kerry is asking us to trust him.
That ad was deployed against Kerry in the 2004 campaign. The idea behind the campaign was that John Kerry was a decorated Vietnam War vet. He had earned several Purple Hearts and a Silver and Bronze Star. And beyond that, Kerry hadn't been drafted. He had voluntarily enlisted. Compare that with his opponent's record, George W. Bush. He used political connections to avoid getting sent to Vietnam and instead assigned to a National Guard unit. It's not a good comparison in election season. Especially if Kerry was going to lean into his military service as part of his campaign. And you better believe Kerry was going to do that.
I'm John Kerry, and I'm reporting for duty.
All this is to say that if Bush wanted to improve his chances of re-election, the advantage granted Kerry by his military service had to be neutralized. And that's what the mission of the Swiftboat Veterans for Truth was. They were an unaffiliated political group that was there to raise questions about Kerry's military service. And they did this through highly provocative ads that usually took one of two routes. Route 1, attack him for exaggerating his military accomplishments in Vietnam, and Route 2, attack him for his activism after his return where he spoke out against the war. The ads were so false and vile that some Republicans ended up defending Kerry, but the ads were ultimately effective in disarming his advantage. So effective, in fact, that the Republican National Convention in 2004, Republicans were parading around in purple stars saying that they had been awarded them for getting a paper cut. Man, Republicans really have always been the party of Trump. So now that we have all the context in place, let's get to Sam's hearing about his well-deserved ambassadorship. His family is there, wife, kids, grandkids, and a whole bunch of Republicans, and what I can only assume is a very confused Claire McCaskill. Sam has a very expensive group of friends at his table who all stand up to introduce him and talk about how virtuous he is. This nauseating display continues until we get to the question and answer part of the hearing, where nominally the committee members interrogate the nominees to see if they are qualified for the position they have been nominated for. But Sam's a political nominee who bought his position, so the answer to the question of if he's qualified or not is no. No, he's not. So how does this work? I've already stated it's a both sides thing in politics, and since neither side really wants to get into the business of attacking each other's donors, it's more or less a rubber stamp process where the nominees of either side are just given a blank approval in most cases. Given that this is a formality, there's barely anyone in attendance on the committee, 1 Democrat and 4 Republicans, an odd ratio for a democratically controlled committee. So Sam is given a few softball questions, and then one committee member gets up to speak, and he doesn't even have a question. He just wants to talk about how great Sam is. And this is the moment. We have reached the top of the mountain. It's all downhill from here. So let's freeze this moment and look around. It's a mostly empty committee room. Sam's here with a table full of politicians with smiles on their faces. His family is there behind the railing that separates the committee proceedings from the general public. They are proud of the honor being bestowed upon their patriarch. Visions of his future life in Belgium dance in Sam's head. Among the committee sits Senator Norm Coleman, who is full of praise for the nominee. Norm is referencing something an earlier speaker, Joe Lieberman, had said. Senator Lieberman said that Sam Fox represents what America is all about. I would say that I'd change that a little bit, amend it to say that Sam Fox represents the best of what America is all about. And now we plunge into hell, because the late arriving John Kerry has shown up to the hearing, and he only has eyes for Sam. Kerry starts off friendly, big smile, praising Sam's accomplishments. He talks about how many distinguished people called him to vouch for Sam. And then he gets to picking apart Sam by hyper-focusing on Sam's qualifications to be the ambassador to Belgium. Which, to be clear, are none. So that leads to exchanges like this one, where after Sam goes into a small amount of detail on a question about the war on terror in Belgium, he makes the critical mistake of saying, "The only information that I have is what I've been provided by the State Department." So you have no knowledge outside of what the State Department's told you about any concerns or issues that Belgians may have about the way we've prosecuted the war on terror. Other than newspapers, I haven't. No, I don't believe so. Goodness, it's almost like Kerry holds a grudge.
How could you accuse us of being war criminals?
And secretly meet with the enemy in Paris.
And promote the enemy's position back home.
But don't worry, we are just getting started, and this is the least of the mistakes Sam makes today. Kerry moves on to the subject of SWIFT. Banking SWIFT. It's a system that handles international transactions between banks. It was a hot-button issue at the time because the U.S. had kind of been spying on transactions using SWIFT and kind of not telling anyone about it, so there was some tension over it. This is relevant because SWIFT is based in Belgium, so it's tangentially related to Sam Fox being ambassador to Belgium. But that brings us back to the problem of Sam Fox not being qualified for the job. Everyone at the hearing knows this, and there is no way that dealing with the fallout of that scandal is going to be part of his job. Everyone knowing this includes Kerry, so the only reason Kerry asks about it is to make Sam look bad. Sam puts up a valiant effort at placating Kerry, but is eventually backed into a corner by Kerry and forced to give answers like, "I'm sorry, I haven't received any information on that, and I have no personal knowledge of that." So yeah, the hearing is not going great. But then Fox actually catches a break. John Kerry's time has expired, so no more questions for him. Round 2 of questions starts immediately, and because no one else has any questions, the mic immediately gets passed back to John Kerry. Kerry keeps slapping Sam around with mean-spirited questions like what are the prospects of the Fleming and Walloon parts of Belgium splitting up, because that hasn't been talked about for 200 years at this point, and the incredibly petty and mean-spirited question of have you ever been to Belgium? I'll give Fox a little bit of credit. He is answering defensively and cautiously, and that is what you want from a political appointee ambassador. For example, being asked to diagnose the principal strategic tensions between NATO and a potential EU army, Fox gives the very smart answer of, as a United States ambassador, I would be looking for this government to come to their conclusions on that, and it would be up to me then to push that agenda. That is the best possible answer. It's not an ambassador's job to make policy. Period. End of sentence. Moving on. Kerry, of course, treats it like Fox is incapable of having independent thoughts. Again, not fair, but I wonder why Kerry is so angry.
He betrayed us in the past. How could we be loyal to him now?
Ravaged the countryside of South Vietnam.
He dishonored his country and, more importantly, the people he served with. He just sold them out.
Swiftboat Veterans for Truth is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
Speaking of Swiftboat Veterans for Truth, Kerry finally gets around to tackling that. Kerry tells at least 2 lies in the lead-up to his next question. 1, he's trying to be fair, and 2, he's not trying for a gotcha. His question after all those false qualifiers is, what is your opinion with respect to the state of American politics as regards the politics of personal destruction? Fox answers with, I am very concerned with the amount of money that's going into politics, and I'm more concerned about the fact that politics has become mean and destructive. Senator, let me say this. I'm against 527s. I've always been against 527s. I think, again, they're mean and destructive. I think they've hurt a lot of good, decent people. And Senator Kerry, I very much respect your dedicated service to this country. I know that you were not drafted. You volunteered. You went to Vietnam. You were wounded. Highly decorated. Senator, you're a hero.
All of the prisoners of war in North Vietnam were tortured in order to obtain confessions of atrocities.
On the other hand, John Kerry came home and accused all Vietnam veterans of unspeakable horrors.
Kerry must have been so angry at hearing the guy who funded attack ads that called him a traitor and a coward call him a hero. That must have been infuriating. Anyway, round 2 of questioning ends, and much like round 1 ending, no one else has any questions, so round 3 starts up immediately. Kerry opens with, why did you donate to the Swiftboat Veterans for Truth if you think 527 groups are so bad? And the answer is so terrible, it single-handedly sinks his chances of Senate confirmation. He talks about his wife, he talks about the American dream, and he talks about how much money he's given to charity, specifically about how he's so generous he'll give money to anyone if he knows who they are. Sam has finally made the critical mistake Kerry has been waiting for. Up until now, he's been pleading ignorance or praising Kerry, but in this particular answer, he makes the mistake of talking about his donation process. Namely that someone asks him to give, and he does. That's a problem because depending on who asked him to do it, that may or may not have been illegal. And Kerry is ready to take full advantage of Sam's mistake. Who asked you to give to the Swiftboat Veterans for Truth? That may sound innocent enough, but it's not. In December 2006, the FEC levied a fine against the Swiftboaters, but also concluded that Swiftboat Veterans for Truth had not illegally coordinated with the Bush campaign. So when Sam Fox says that he'll give money to anyone if someone asks, that means that someone asked him to give money to the Swiftboaters. And if the person who asked him to give was a member of the Bush campaign, well, that's going to be a heck of a scandal to erupt at this supposedly low-stakes hearing. So now Sam is faced with a very tough choice and roughly 10 seconds to make it in. Play dumb and pretend to not remember who asked him to donate to the Swiftboaters, whatever the consequences, or tell the truth and watch the whole world blow up. Sam chooses to play dumb, and predictably this just makes Kerry angrier. You have no recollection of why you gave away $50,000? I gave away $50,000 because I was asked to. But you have no recollection of who asked you to give away $50,000? No, sir, I've given away sums much larger than that to a lot of other places, and I can't tell you specifically who asked me, no. Well, don't you think it's important as a citizen who doesn't like 527s to know where your money is going and how it's going to be spent? Well, I think with most contributors, and as a matter of fact, if you go to other side of the political campaign and we give to the individual candidate, we don't know how they're going to use that money and how it's, Well, at least it's accountable to an individual candidate for whom people have to vote or not vote. As you said, 527s are mean and ugly and not accountable. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And I... So why would you give $50,000 to a group that you have no sense of accountability for? Well, because if 527s were banned, then it's banned for both parties. And so long as they're not banned... So two wrongs make a right. Well, I don't know, but if one side is contributing, the other side ought to. But is that your judgment? Is that your judgment that you would bring to the ambassadorship, that two wrongs make a right? No, I didn't say two wrongs make a right, sir. Well, why would you do it then? Well, I did it because politically it's necessary if the other side's doing it. Yeah, Kerry must have built up some anger over 2-3 years since the 2004 campaign. Must have been a fun sight, though. This rich dude who spent his entire life funneling money into politics, flanked by a Praetorian guard of loyal senators, in full view of his entire family on the day when he is to be crowned with the title of ambassador, instead gets verbally bludgeoned by a very ticked-off John Kerry. The hearing wraps up with Norm Coleman doing damage control and then Obama piling on. And to use words not used before about Sam Fox, poor Sam. Sam Fox did not have his nomination to become ambassador forwarded out of committee, and he did not get voted on by the Senate. Which means literally nothing because Sam was recess appointed by Bush into the post a month and a half later. Fox served as ambassador for 2 years, without pay because it was a recess appointment. Afterwards, he went back to his quiet rich guy life of campaign contributions that, under oath, he will probably not remember giving. Was this a fair hearing? The purpose of this hearing was to figure out if Sam was qualified to be an ambassador. And on that front, it was a complete success. Every time Kerry questioned Sam, it was revealed his knowledge of Belgium was largely derived from a State Department briefing. So from that perspective, the hearing was a smashing success. It was very much confirmed that Sam was extremely unqualified to be an ambassador. But the long-term effects of the hearing were nil. Sam got his ambassadorship, and when he was done, he went back to being a political rainmaker, like nothing had happened. Still, nice to see the mildest of penalties applied to someone who has spent so much money making our country a worse place.